Hi, my name's Gloria Morrison. I'm the campaign coordinator for Joint Enterprise Not Guilty by Association, also known as JEAP. We're a grassroots campaign made up of families who have loved ones in prison convicted using the doctrine of joint enterprise. This is a brief introduction to our Joint Enterprise Appeals project, which I'm here with Louise Hewitt, who runs the London Innocent Project London, who's helping us with our JEAP project. It's our fourth year, and obviously because of COVID this year, we are going to try to do this work
online.
Yeah. Thank you.
So this just is really to give an overview of the activity, a potential timeline, so that if you are interested and you want to get involved, you can contact us, but there'll be more details that follow. So JEAP has the overarching aim to enable law and criminology students to learn about the law on joint enterprise and how it's applied to the courts. What do they learn, Gloria?
Well, one, from a campaigning point of view, they learn what joint enterprise actually is, because on paper or in theory, it doesn't seem like it's that dangerous or that bad. If you have a group of people who go out and commit a crime collectively, then they can all be punished collectively. But what's happened over the years is that you get people that are very much on the periphery that also get convicted along with the main principal. That means people who haven't committed murder have gone to prison for murder. So, but on the completion of the project, the students will be able to demonstrate their ability to investigate cases to find out how the individual was convicted of joint enterprise in terms of the evidence that was presented in court. So we're looking at a much more holistic approach to looking at our cases, not just looking at the summing up, although that's the main piece of paperwork we'll be giving the students, because that's a way of looking at how the court process works. But it's not ideal because there are other things that are left out of summings up, or they're not always not biased, although they should be. But they will also be able to
identify how joint enterprise was argued by the prosecution and the type of language that was used. So I think Gloria and I have both been talking about the fact that we see in a number of cases more and more about joint responsibility or joint principles.
Yeah.
And that's something, the language has shifted ever so slightly. So it'd be really good this year to try and figure out or examine actually what kind of shift there is in that language, pre-Jogi and post-Jogi as well. Evaluation of the route to verdict. We've seen various qualities of the route to verdict over time, haven't we, over the years?
Yeah.
And I think it's quite interesting for students to look at the route to verdict and see actually how different some of those routes to verdict can be in terms of how the jury are then directed to consider the evidence in a joint enterprise case.
And I'm not sure you can advise me on this, but one of the problems we have is getting hold of legal paperwork. So we haven't always got route to verdicts. In fact, in my experience, route to verdicts is a fairly newish construct. It didn't happen back in, lots of cases didn't have route to verdicts. So they're obviously very important now for practitioners, especially in the court, because they think that, the ones I've looked at are a bit daft. I think if you think this, go to A. If you think this, go to B. But actually, it'd be really good for students to try and find paperwork themselves, because I don't know, that's what I'm going to say, ethically, whether they'd be able to do it. Obviously, the students have the permission and the correspondence with, I don't like calling them clients, we call them inside campaigners, our prisoners, but the inside campaigner can say, well, I couldn't get, my lawyers just said I couldn't have my paperwork. That is a very, very typical thing, that the lawyers deny access to their own paperwork. That's a number of things. It's just a job. It's money. It's because maybe there was a bad representation and they don't want that pointed out. But I think these are the things that students, especially those students that are doing law and want to become practitioners, can find out about what are the hurdles to overcome when you are trying to prove innocence. And it's a massive hurdle. It's almost impossible to get back to the Court of Appeal, especially with joint enterprise cases. And I think students need to realise this, that we haven't got the perfect justice system. So it's definitely a worthwhile experience. course project for people to undertake, because it's a much more eye-opening experience of the justice system.
So we've got those on the screen there, or the rest of them we've discussed, but just moving on. So I think we want to make it clear this year that it's not Innocence work.
No.
I'm director, as Glo said, of Innocence Project London, but the students that work on JEAP are very, very clear that it's not in the capacity of undertaking any kind of innocence type work or innocence investigations. It's about examining the evidence that was used to link the defendant to the joint enterprise. So we've seen in the past, it can be a car, it can be the gang narrative, which we see quite a lot, don't we, in a number of cases. And also in terms of, as I've said previously on the previous slide, looking at the language that was used by the judge to the jury, and the clarity in terms of the steps to verdict as well.
Yeah.
So this is our proposed timeline of activity. We know that most people are doing blended learning in the online space, so JEAP's gone to the online space. So we thought it'd be useful that if you are thinking of taking part, you've got kind of an outline of where we propose to have some workshops for participants, also a progress meeting, but also the deadline for reports and when we would hope to put together or be able to host the presentations. So we've said the 16th of October for the deadline for participants to join JEAP for this year. Then we got a couple of 4 workshops, haven't we?
Yeah.
All designed predominantly, all for participants that are taking part in JEAP. So that can be academics as well as the students taking part. And then reports to be completed by the 2nd of April.
Yeah. I just want to stress as well that one of the queries we have from the academics is how much of the workload they have to take on, because obviously a lot aren't lawyers, and how much support we can give. This is a new year. It's a new sort of work in progress, as it were. We have got access to lawyers who will be able to help. One of our lectures is going to be hopefully Felicity Jerry, who will explain the development of the law and where we're at. Joint enterprise is still being used right now, so those cases we won't have access to, because normally we get people afterwards. But just to assure you that a lot of the work will be done our end, and we want to keep it actually quite small this year. The last few years we've had about 15 universities, which is fine. We don't mind more universities coming on board, because we have to educate young people that this doctrine is still being used. But we've actually got a coordinator that's going to help with the sort of the administration side of things, and also we've got the wonderful Louise. And so there won't be, and we won't be asking you to do 7 or 8 cases. We're probably asking you to take on mainly 1 or 2. I don't think it'll be more than that, because actually I think if you've got a group of 4 students, say, looking at one case and really getting down to the knuckle of it, that's more important to us than just a sort of blanket, yes, isn't joint enterprise rubbish, because it is, but we know that. We need to kind of say, this is why. And I think the final outcome of these reports are something we are going to include in, there's 2 things that are happening right now. We've got a mercy plea that Felicity Jerry is doing, and that's in the courts right now. We don't know the outcome of that's going to be, but there's also a joint enterprise bill. So the students need to realise that their work will be a contribution to trying to get a bill through Parliament that says that the substantial injustice that the Supreme Court said that only cases who were convicted previously, before Jogi, can go back to the Court of Appeal if they can prove substantial injustice. That test is far too high, and it makes it impossible for anyone to go back to the Court of Appeal. So although the law's been wrong for 34 years, we have not had one conviction overturned, not one, except John Crilly, which was down to manslaughter, and John will be one of our speakers. But really the work that they're trying to do is to just enhance the work of a campaign to say, look, this is wrong, you've locked people up for life. The over 1,000 prisoners we're supporting now, the majority of them are serving a life sentence and will come out on a life license. So it's not like they come out and they're coming out on eggshells. So all of this has to be challenged, and this work is really fundamental towards that. And that's why I really urge you to take part and your students to take part, because it's very, very rewarding, not just to get miscarriage justice under your skin, but it does stay with you. It does make you question much more about the justice system. And it's really important not just to think everything is hunky-dory and nice. But any support that you need from the campaign, we're more than willing to give you that.
Absolutely. We've got a proposed date for presentation of reports as Wednesday the 16th of June. In the current climate, we are planning for that virtually, but it's a fluid situation at the moment, so we can change it to being in person, depending on, I suppose, the lay of the land at that time. But we would like to get students together to present their reports, to really kind of finish off their achievement in completing the reports as well. And also they get that experience of presenting and articulating what they found and their arguments too. So if you're interested, contact either of us, both of us. We have got, or JEAP have got set up a confidentiality agreement this year, which also would include returning any hard copy paperwork. I think most of the paperwork will be emailed out, but in case anything gets into your possession that is hard copy, it would be really good for JEAP to have those documents back. In previous years, the documents have taken a while to come back. And also, whilst you're reviewing joint enterprise appeal cases, and they're cases that JEAP have got, and they are, post-conviction, post-appeal, there are people at the other end of them in those terms. So I suppose there is we'll advise if there is a degree of confidentiality assigned to any of the documents. Is that about right?
Yeah.
So that's our contact details. That's our email. Get in touch if you want to take part. We'd love to have you taking part, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. That's good. That's fine. It's all right, isn't it?
That's perfect. There you go.
You're amazing. I never